And we are live, folks, and it is my good fortune today to have Justin Rhodes with us as a guest on the Survival Podcast for episode, I think it's 3043.
Ooh.
And it's been a long time since you've been on, man. You were on the show years ago. We both were at Permaculture Voices together, I think a couple of times, if at least not once. We kind of go way back. I've been watching you progress online forever, it seems like at this point. And you've really built a really great following and a lot of great informational material. You've got a new book out now. I have it right here, The Rooted Life. Thanks for sending me a copy, though there wasn't a signature in it. Come on, man. We'll have to see each other sometime and rectify that. But I know you well, but not everybody in my audience might. So let's start off with, who is Justin Rhodes?
Well, I'm a sustenance homesteader in the mountains of Western North Carolina, working together with my family to grow our own food. And really just so excited about that. That's my passion, just to complete my joy. I just share what we're doing with others. And that ends up being probably the most popular is our YouTube channel, Justin Rhodes. And then I have my own streaming network now, Abundance Plus. And so those are probably the two biggest ways that people know. And now hopefully the book, people will find us that way. But just exploring these different mediums, just getting the word out, just really something we're excited about and just wanting to share.
So you talk about this at the very beginning of your book, but could you share with people a little bit about what made you do this in the first place? Go from kind of everyday person buying food at the store to I want to produce a significant amount of our own food.
Dude, I was like everybody else, man. Just screw up. I had a house in the country, but we did everything in town. And that was our trajectory. We were just going to be normal people like everybody else. And then my wife, she picked up on this article or something about the dangers of conventional milk, the hormones in it. I don't know if it was at the time the GMOs or whatever. It was something like that. And she came and we had to switch. We've got to go to organic milk. And that's a lot of when people go to this health route. You can see where I'm going with this. I'm going on a health route. They switch. Milk. It starts at milk, right? You have the Horizon milk. It's very popular. So we get to this organic milk, but then, when we run out of pepper or ketchup, we started replacing it with organic. And I'm freaking out because I'm cheap-wide Justin, and I'm like, when you start, Jack, you know this. If you start shopping on the outskirts of the grocery store where it's like Whole Foods, like meat and fruits and vegetables, it's way more expensive than what's in the processed stuff in the middle, the mac and cheeses and stuff. And I'm freaking out. Our income hasn't changed. So we are literally checking out of the grocery store, checking out bundles of kales, lettuce, things like that. $3 for a bunch of a head of lettuce, let's say. Well, I happen to look over and I see a seed pack, and I see seed pack rack, and I think, and I go over there, and just out of curiosity, I look, they're priced about $3. But I noticed there's 100 seeds in these things. And I didn't need to know much to know one lettuce seed is probably going to give me one lettuce head. And I was realizing, wait, this is 100x the price. All I've got to do is put in the labor. I was like, wait, why are these seed stores even for sale in the grocery store? Isn't that counterintuitive? And why isn't everybody flocking there? So I don't know if it was that day or soon after. It's pretty much picked up a seed pack. And knew nothing. Sure, they have spacing and stuff on the seed packs, but what do you do? How do you prep it? Do you plant it in the grass? Like, I knew nothing. So Rebecca's parents had some friends who I knew who grew a garden, and just called him up. Hey, would you come help me prepare a garden? And he came out with his tiller and helped me get going with a garden. And that's really how it all going. It started with wanting to be healthy, but also being cheap.
No, I get it. I grew up with that mindset. Like we had about a half-acre garden, quarter-acre garden, I would say, and then about another quarter-acre for the birds, dedicated to them as a kid in high school. And we did that because, and I didn't know at the time, because we were dead poor. And like it was a significant part of the food we ate. We did hunting and fishing and foraging too for the same reason. I just thought it was all fun and games, So I think there's a long history of that. And then we kind of lost it. Like, I think I'm about 50. So my generation, a very small piece of it really tied into their grandparents and saw that. A lot of us didn't. and then it kind of ebbed off. And then we had this big resurgence right about the time I started the show in 08. And I was trying to remember kind of when you launched your thing and the first time you were on the show. It's got to be prior to 2014. I don't know exactly when.
I've been YouTubing for 6 years. I came and saw you on the Great American Farm Tour 5 years ago. But I think I got on your show even before I was YouTubing because
you did.
Cultured chickens.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, that's what it was. You had the one product, and that was kind of how you launched your presence with Permaculture chickens.
That's it.
And I say it's got to be around 2014 because I think that was the PV Permaculture Voices we were at together. Yeah. Was that year. So it's somewhere in that range. That's like 8 years. And you didn't just come out with that product. Like you were already on this journey. So you've been doing this a while. I've been doing this a while, kind of did it as a kid, came back around and did it as an adult. And we did see this resurgence, but nothing like during the 2020 pandemic. That was insane. What are your thoughts on why it exploded so heavily? Was it just fear, or do you think that maybe we and people like us primed the pump for that to happen? Like there was so much information out there and it was in people's orbit. And then it was like, once I bought my toilet paper, well, what can I do next?
Yeah. Well, I could go a lot of places with that. I'm wondering if in 2008, well, that was a financial crisis. I don't know if that had anything to do with why you got started or going there. Does it have anything to do with it?
It really didn't for me, but it was a big part of why it took off in my audience, I think. I got on, I initially was talking about economics. I went back to the land, so to say, with growing my own food and all, right after 9/11, and it wasn't a panic. It was, I was always gone, and there was no grounding in my family, and my son was still in, grade school at the time. It's a long time ago if we're going back to 9/11. And so I was already doing it, but it was definitely, it fit well with, hey, because I started before the crisis. I started early in 08, and I was like, you guys better get money out of the freaking stock market, and you better plant a garden, you better be prepared, and you better do all those things. So, yeah, that was part of, I think, what pushed it then, but nothing like 2020.
Well, what happened in 2020? It was interesting because, Jack, you're laying it out here for me. Like six years ago, I started my YouTube channel. Economics are good. People have jobs and stuff. But going into 2020, and every year I do a spring launch, a fall launch, and a New Year's launch of my member area, Abundance Plus. And we were going into a spring launch in 2020. And you know this, Jack. When they put in the quarantines and stuff like that, not much really changes for us homesteaders. It's like, welcome to our world. We homeschool. We're there. So, but we are aware, and we're considerate, and I'm always considering the audience. And I'm like, I started actually being like, well, wait, maybe I shouldn't sell. I felt kind of weird about maybe pitching my member area in the spring. Mm-hmm. And people at the same time were losing their jobs. And so I had a talk with my assistant. I said, Heather, I told her these feelings. And she said, you know what, Justin, you have the answer. What you're offering is the answer. And she was so right. And that, it gives me chills now. It triggers me. People were getting $1,000 stimulus at the time. Mm-hmm. I did a series of videos to promote our member area. How much produce could you get out of your garden if you invested $1,000? You remember, you're telling people to get out of the stock market, start investing in gardens, I asked Joel Salatin once, hey, do you invest in the stock market? And he's like, no, heck, if I get any extra money, I'm putting it in ponds. So it's that whole idea. So how much, if you put $1,000 into meat chickens, if you put $1,000 into laying eggs, turns out you're 3Xing or more your investment. You cannot, if you put your money in the stability of the overall index fund in the stock market, the S&P 500 or something, you're going to get 8% every year. It's done that last 100 years. Very consistent. Outperforms real estate. It does not outperform the garden. Not even close. Like 300% versus 800%. So I think people, look, Jack, we were promoting my services as an educator, as, hey, look, you can save money. It's healthier. You can work with your family. You're being connected. But what happened in 2020 is a new one.
Yeah.
Because food shortages entered our vernacular for the first time. Mine, at least, as a 43-year-old. And my goodness, people needed security, even if it was just a freaking basil seed planted in a terracotta pot in their windowsill. They needed something. And to answer your question, I think we had the fortune of already being there when people were searching it out, because our YouTube channel went up 60% that year. Our sales in Abundance Plus quadrupled, and we were there.
Yeah, it's been a good year, as you might, or good couple of years, as you might imagine, for something called the Survival Podcast as well. It seems to have gotten people's attention. On the ROI, like there's bigger things than that. I know you're not a CPA or anything. Here's a financial question for you. If I buy $1,000 worth of stock and it goes up and I get lucky and I sell it for $5,000, what do I pay taxes on?
Yeah, that's true.
$4,000, right?
Yeah.
But if I invest $1,000 into my homestead, and over the next year, I harvest $5,000 worth of food at retail grocery prices, how much do I pay taxes on? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And our tax assessor people are so dumb. They don't even understand the value of that increase. They understand the value increase of a deck or a pool or a remodel, but you can plant all the bushes, trees, livestock, infrastructure, all that stuff you want, and it doesn't move the needle on your property appreciation. Now, it might appreciate for other reasons, but that's not why. We're like, when we put the pool and the deck in, we immediately saw a hit. You know, they go on Google Earth and they look, oh, he's got a pool and a deck now. We'll just add 20 grand to the value of his property. But I've never noticed any correlation between ponds going in or gardens going in or trees going in or chickens or ducks and my property taxes. So there's a lot of other ways you can invest that maybe even if you did as well, you still don't net as well. Plus, who controls that mutual fund or that individual stock?
I know.
You know, we don't. That's the greatest answer in the world. We really don't know who controls it, but
you're right.
Who controls your meat chicken operation? You do.
Me. Yeah.
And I think people I think that's another part of why it exploded. Like people realize, like, I need to do something that I can touch, that I can see, that I can look at, right? And I think, like you said, like our lives didn't change much, and I think our impact on social media was big with that too. Where like everybody's freaking out, locked in their house. Like, what am I going to do? I can't find, any more barley or whatever. All of a sudden they wanted to buy barley and wheat or some shit. And, I'm posting pictures of me and my grandson fishing in the backyard pond. Right. And we're listening to classic music. They're like, are you afraid you're going to get COVID? I'm like, they practically live with me. I mean, what am I going to do? Tell them they can't come here anymore? Like, know? And then like, I think over time people started looking at it going, gee, kind of wish we would have listened to these guys a long time ago, because I think there was a lot of people listening to people like us and they liked the idea, but they had yet to take the action. So I think there was a lot of like funnel priming there for businesses, but also just for the movement as a whole.
Man, you speak to it, because they can get started that year, but homesteading, it's a patience game. When we first started with sheep, we got on Greg Judy's waiting list to get the best sheep in the world. And then that was a year. And then we got the sheep, and then we waited a year to breed them. And then we waited 9 months, and then they were born and waited almost another year. So we're looking at like 3 years, but guess, we're harvesting during the middle of all this.
Yep.
That end result, we're reaping that. And that was nice. That was nice to be able to, be okay with feeling secure if they did even, God forbid, prevent you from going into the grocery store for whatever reason. We walk to our freezer and pull it out, but that is from work put in. And, I say if there's anything good going to come, let's look at this. There is something good coming out of this. And that is that people are wanting to grow more close to their heart and right outside their door and take some control. We had a carpenter in that time. So, what I found out in 2020 that my business was recession proof, like alcohol or guns. I found out teaching homesteading tends to be recession proof. I mean, we actually went up, and it makes sense because it's the answer. And I had a carpenter at that time. I was giving people jobs. He had no jobs. His main source dried up because they wanted him to put, all the restrictions. Everybody was really scared at first. I mean, nobody knew, was this serious? Was this something that was going to be terribly dangerous? You know what? And so he came and he told me there was no chicken on the shelves at the grocery store. We never heard of that. Supply chain issues, that's a new thing. That's a new term in our head.
Yeah.
So it's gotten us thinking, and I was thankful that I could just go to my freezer and give him some chickens.
You know, you mentioned the sheep, and I want to pause there a second because there's some interesting things. One, there was a interview you did on site with Greg with the sheep. Yeah. And that's one that I'll make sure I get it in the show notes. Everybody should go watch that video on your channel. That was one of the best videos I saw, whether you want to be small scale, kind of like you are, or go large scale, and the advantages of sheep over cattle. But there's a unique advantage in this situation. So what I found was that there were people, they could buy a cow or split a half beef. They couldn't get it processed during all this. Right? And processing a cow, I don't know if you've ever processed any animal over about 300 pounds. I mean, even a 300-pound pig it is brute force labor. It is not easy. And once you start, there's kind of a time that you have to get it broken down to where you can chill it, you know, in whatever means you have to chill it. If it's really cold outside, you can hang it up in a barn. That's one thing. But if you don't have a walk-in cooler, processing a cow on your own is hard. Yeah. Processing a lamb is almost no different than processing a deer. Yeah. It's about the same size as a decent sized mature whitetail. You can throw a gamble on the legs, hoisting up in your barn or out in a tree in your backyard. And if you know what you're doing, you can go to work with a skinning knife and you can break that animal down and quarter it. You can age it in a spare refrigerator if you want to hang the meat for a little bit before you process it further. And you can't do that with a cow. Same thing. You're big on chickens, right? Like, so I can have a flock of chickens, and maybe I'm doing some dedicated meat birds, but I also can do some hybridization. I can breed a large breed, like let's say a Brahma rooster to a Buff Orpington hen. I can have them running around out there. It'd be better if they were harvested rather young, but I don't have to harvest them. And I don't have to store that. I can go out and like, so these advantages that we're able to give people by teaching this mindset. Like, so you might run a 25 bird or 50 bird meat bird run every year using Cornish cross. But if you need more meat than that, you have to on the fly bring it up. You can. Yeah. You know, does that make sense?
I know. You're the boss. You bring that up about the sheep. I think sheep are the most underrated farm animal there is, a homestead animal there is. It's delicious. They're small. Like a goat, they give you milk. Tastes better than a goat and don't get out as bad, and will eat everything too. They'll eat the poison ivy and the bramble. And if you didn't have a bramble, unlike a goat, a sheep can survive 100%, not just survive, but thrive on just 100% grass. So
yeah, grass and browse. And if you do the sheep like Greg's doing, hair sheep, right? There's a couple of things I loved about that interview you did with him. One was when he was like, no, I don't do wool sheep. It costs more money to take I just love his directness. It costs more money to take the wool off the sheep than the wool is worth. Why would you do that? And then his solution and why he's got such an obedient flock of sheep, and how he was talking about how if a sheep jumps the fence, the electric fence, as soon as one does it, the other one does it, and then they learn from each other. You come out one day, there's one, you put them back in, you come out the next day, there's three. So as soon as a sheep jumps the fence, it gets taken out like a deer rifle, and then that's meat for the house. And he's been doing that apparently a long time, and he's, I think, genetically selected sheep that don't jump over fences.
Yeah. No, he does. I'll have my sheep in an electric net, and that net will fall over for some reason or whatever, be laying on the ground. They won't get out. I mean, he's trained those sheep to stay in one strand of electric fence. For those that don't know, that's just unheard of. That's just ludicrous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. And it's probably kind of like, dude, let me tell you what the deal is if you go over that fence. Right? Yeah. There's a loud bang, and then you fall over, and then you don't come back. So I wouldn't do it, you know.
Well, you know what's cool about Greg Judy is it's this no-nonsense approach. He's looking at it. He's able to look at it from macro level, you know, and say, if you ask him in one of my original videos on the farm tour, the reason he got into sustainable or regenerative ag, whatever you want to call it, was for the money. It was more profitable. He was going bankrupt conventional farming, and he just loved the cows so much. He had to find a way, and he found that, my goodness, he could quadruple the production of his land. Same land, quadruple the output if he just started moving the animals every day. And now he's like moving his animals 4 times a day. And it's not this, I got to do it. No, I move them. I'm working on the land as opposed to an office and making a great living. You remember when we were at Permaculture Voices? I don't know if you remember there. And I think Paul Wheaton or somebody said, who in here is turned a profit last year?
That was me.
You might have raised your hand. Greg Judy.
No, that was me that asked that question. I said, whose farm was profitable last year?
Who raised their hand? Remember that?
Yes.
Greg Judy put it right up.
He was like the only one. There was like 2 people that raised their hands, and I'm like, oh, wow. Oh, that's not good.
It's okay to make money because guess what, Jack? Your point is, well, Greg Judy's still around, and now he's making YouTube videos, and he's expanding this movement. And when people are drawn towards this, there's something for them to watch and learn from. And where are those other people?
Out of business at best, right?
Going back to their office, I guess.
Yeah. They're drawing stimulus checks. On the whole thing, though, we're kind of talking about something that's more of a large-scale money-making operation in Judy. And most of my listeners, most of your followers are people that are trying to feed themselves and their families, small homestead holdings, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Do you think this movement in homesteading is it real? Is it got legs behind? Is it sustainable? Is it going to grow? Or is it like a short-term fad kicked in by COVID? Or is it somewhere between those two?
I'm thinking, from my perspective, I don't think it's a fad. I think it's a trend. It's an upward trend. And where I'm going, where I think, the reason I think that is when we traveled America in 2000, it was 5 years ago, it was 2017. We hadn't been to Walmart in years. We'd like to order our stuff online, but when we go on the road and you're living in a converted school bus, Walmart becomes your best friend. I mean, they have everything. You can get a Fix-A-Flat and bananas at the same place. So, but you know what you could also get there? I noticed they had organic milk. They had, I think Target has kombucha. They were getting into the organics. That's not because the Walton family is convicted towards organics and a better world, right? No, I think it's because people are demanding it. And now that you ask that, and I look at my perspective, what happened to me? I started trying to eat healthier. I mean, we have a health crisis on our hands in America. We're going to start eating healthier, and people are going to start demanding it. And I see people going on my same journey. Not everybody. There will be people who will support farms and local farms and whatnot. But I would think that a big portion, as this health movement grows, so will the food movement. Because if you get on growing your own food, not only are you eating healthier food, you're getting vitamin D because you're out in the sun. You're getting cold exposure, which is a health benefit. Take off your sweater in the morning. Be a little cold doing the chores. You're getting exercise. You're moving. You're getting emotional therapy, because you have your kids or spouse with you, or you're seeing the sunrise. You know what I mean? So I think because the health movement is going up, this stuff's going to go up, and and like health is not going out of fashion or date, and so I don't think this will either.
I think a big part of it is meat production and other protein and fat production as well, whether it's dairy, the ability to make your own cheese, raising your own meat chickens, egg flocks, all of that, because it seems like the mainstream is pushing everybody to eat, I don't know, beet juice colored soy curd burger or whatever, the impossible burger. It's impossible that it's burger. That's what it is. And I think people have this desire, no matter how much they try to turn us into, vegetarians or vegans, most people have a desire to eat meat. We know that it's the most nutrient dense food we can get. Yeah. And I think that as they push harder there, they actually are going to push more people into this world. I think the whole concept of carnivore, ketogenic eating, things like that have actually fueled it as well. It seems like a lot of people go into keto, right? Or carnivore eating. They follow somebody like Ken Berry. And the first thing they want to do is make mozzarella pizza balls or some shit like that. But as their health improves, even if they're doing dirty keto or whatever, all of a sudden they start wanting a grass-fed beef. And then they start finding out, like you did, how much that costs, right? And that, pastured poultry. And they start realizing, well, okay, I'm going to pay $25 a bird. And then they wonder where that cost comes from versus a $5 subsidized chicken house of horror chicken. When they do the math, they're like, oh, that guy has to make that much. But even if I buy a few, I can't feed my family paying that rate. Some people have the money to do it. That's why those farmers can earn a living, but some people don't. So all of a sudden, right where you were at the beginning of this episode, if I want to eat this way, then I need to do these things for myself so that I can turn around, and maybe I can't raise that chicken for $5 like the one at the grocery store, but I can raise a much better chicken for $10 to $12. and I'm paying half of what I would buy it for.
And some of this is backfiring on people. I've been reading about psychology and stuff like that. And it actually turns out, like with the censorship and stuff that's going on across the social media, when people become censored, the opposite happens from what the authority wants. They want them to submit. But what happens is more people buck.
Yeah.
That's why we have all these. I see you have all these different platforms that aren't censored. Like all these different platforms have popped up. We're creating our own. So that's just human nature, and it's firing against them. And so it's like that too. You know, with this. Okay, a good example is you talked about this push for this chemical meat, and you know. Bill Gates was getting heavy in that, and that's kind of frightening with the amount of money they have, that money going into that type of stuff. And, you know, we had a heifer, and we traditionally sell if folks don't know, heifer is a female cow. We traditionally sell those. Rebecca and I are like, no, we're going to hang on to that heifer, and we're going to eat that heifer. Like, it made us more hungry for beef, trying to cancel it. And I could get into how actually beef is one of the most sustainable, eco-friendly things you could do. We might get into that later. I don't know, but
well, it eats perennial grass, and the grass grows back. I mean, if I have to explain more than that, there's a lot more to it. But if I have to explain more than that, you don't want to understand, right?
Well, as long as this grass is shining, Jack, the cow's food is growing, and if the sun stops shining, we got way bigger problems. Okay, we're done in just like we're done in hours. You know what I mean? So
yeah, maybe minutes.
Right? So it's funny how these pressures comes in, and if that's their agenda, then it's not working, because it's backfiring. Silent people are getting loud. You know, we're finding it's actually creating community, and eventually it will make people bold and think more for themselves. And so there can be a lot of good come from all this. Absolutely. And it's trending. Like, as long as there's people trying to strip freedom, what are we homesteaders going to be doing? The homesteader movement is going to grow, and they're going to want to be growing their own things, because that creates freedom. That gives them security in their heart. They don't have to depend on a third party or a government to get them their food.
Yeah. How important do you think it is for people to do this in 2022, given the place we're headed down right now?
I mean, I think homesteading is one of the most foolproof things you can do, good times or bad. Like, what's it going to hurt? What it's going to hurt if you invest $1,000, get $3,000 worth of produce, even if you did it out of heart of preparation, and then things didn't go that way. Who cares? Like, you have all this abundance of food that you could sell, share with neighbors, eat for yourself, store. You know, I have you said I lean heavy towards chicken. I'll admit on this that I'm moving towards beef, or not beef, cows. Yeah. I say not beef because a cow can give you milk, and which milk gives you all kinds of things, and beef and livestock to sell, because always analyzing what's going on and saying, well, supply chain issues. What happens if there's a supply chain issue with grain? Chickens are great. I mean, you could raise 12 on an acre and never feed them.
Yeah.
And that's fine and true. So it would, if something were to happen and we were to have, at least, I don't think it's a stretch for anybody to say we could have a supply chain issue with grain. That's not going to shock anybody more. No. If I came on your show 3 years ago and said, you know, I'm prepping for a food shortage issue, you know, the mainstream might write me off. The mainstream is even going to agree with me here. There could be a grain shortage. And so I'm looking at, and in my health journey, Jack, you mentioned Ken Berry. These carnivore, these keto guys will tell you these are the superfoods. Yeah. The beef from head to toe, eating those organs, the raw milk. These are not just survival foods; they're thrival foods. Yep. And I realize as long as the grass is growing, I can go out there and harvest. I harvested 3 gallons this morning from my milk. That's Morgan told me. I saw him. He's on your comments. He told me not to do math in public. That's 24 pounds of. But I went for it. He can correct me if I'm wrong. That's 24 pounds of. That's 24 pounds of food, Jack. That's enough for me and my family of 6, not just to survive in a pinch. We could thrive just consuming that raw milk. So.
No, I think there's a lot to it. And yeah, acai berries are not superfoods. I'm sorry, right? Wheatgrass is not a superfood unless you feed it to a cow and eat the cow, right? Like,
I know you can.
But if people have a hard time accepting this, but if you tried to live on, let's say, corn and only corn, you're going to die. And if you don't die, you're probably going to die. If you do nixtamalization, you might survive. But if you try to live exclusively on corn, you're going to die.
Yeah.
If you were to live exclusively on cow, so that, like you said, that's organs, that's beef, that's the fat, that's all it. You will thrive.
No, you'll thrive.
You will thrive, and all you have to do is look at when early societies went out and did exploring, and they ran into indigenous societies that had not really embraced ag, that were living mainly off fish and game. And they referred, like when they came to the United States here, there were Native Americans who were doing more of a farming lifestyle, but most like the Northeast, and because of the abundance of the Northeast woods, and then the Plains Indians with the abundance of buffalo and elk, they were living on almost all meat, and they referred to them as giants because their average person was several inches taller. Not just that they were more muscular and leaner, but they were taller. And when you come into a place and somebody's 2 inches taller than you or 3 inches taller, you don't like, oh, that guy's a giant. But when freaking everybody is like that, you start to feel like, hey, we're kind of outclassed here on size. And so I think there's definitely something to the historical consumption of meat-based diets. Absolutely.
Well, look at it now. We can look at it now. Let's look at some giants. You mentioned Ken Berry. He's jacked.
Yeah, he's jacked. He's like 54 years old, and he's
mid 50s, best shape of his life. Jack Liver King on Instagram, and then Carnivore MD, Sean Baker. All these guys are jacked, and they have these people who are
Thomas DeLore.
Yeah, and people and they have all these testimonies of people doing this, and not just surviving on it, no thriving, and it ends up being. And one thing you mentioned about the Native Americans, even if they were growing the maize or whatever, it's not this. We kind of live in this new era when I can get watermelon all year round. I can get bananas, Jack. If I was the Cherokee Nation in North Carolina, I'm not eating bananas.
No.
But everywhere in the world, there is animal all year round, even up in the Antarctic.
Yeah, Bill Mollison said the further you go into Arctic climates, the more you have to be a carnivore. Just because that's the stuff that the animal can eat, you can't. But you can't process lichens into human, but a muskox can, right? Yeah, there's definitely something to that. And yeah, it does change your health. I'm a walking example of it. I've lost close to 100 pounds. And people look at me sometimes, some of the pictures I post recently, you must be pounding weights or whatever. Like, hay bales, straw bales, shoveling compost, but I haven't touched a barbell in a long time, man. Your body just retunes when your hormones are right. What do you think, though? Like, let's go even higher level. And Bill Mollison was famous for saying all the world's solution, or actually Jeff Lawton, all the world's problems can be solved in a garden. I think that is a metaphor, and it needs to not be taken just like, all we need is a garden and everybody will be happy. But I kind of feel like the whole package together homesteading permaculture thing is a solution to a lot of problems in the world.
Yeah. You know what Lucas Nelson sings? Turn off the news and build a garden.
Huh.
I like it. So, it's the solution because you're actually going into your realm of influence. I mean, there's this circle of concern, this Stephen Covey stuff, that habits of successful people. There's this realm of concern that we absolutely got no control over. And you could watch Fox News or CNN or whatever it is. And let's admit it. I mean, you're going to be entertained. It's going to be interesting. But what can you do about it? You're going to go away stressed. What can you do about it? Well, turn that off and build a garden And that's not putting your that's not putting your head in the sand. That's putting the battle armor on and going to war towards these problems and making a difference. And so what happens that you mentioned, it needs to be a metaphor or whatever. It doesn't need to stop at the garden. I like to say, because I like to eat more meat, you turn off the news and tend to chicken.
Yeah.
So it could go that way too. That's what we mean. But what's interesting is Martha Stewart, Oprah has a garden. It's socially acceptable. Those are allowed before anything else, in HOAs and stuff. You're not a weirdo if you have a garden, and you can maybe have a garden and maybe not even change your life too much, and your friends don't think you're crazy. But you have a garden long enough, you get enough success. What are you going to do, Jack? You're going to get a chicken. You're going to get some chicken.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the gateway drug, right? The garden is the gateway drug, and it's
to homesteading.
It's not just acceptable, it's almost enviable to people, right? Like whenever you watch even mainstream movies and sitcoms and whatever, there's always the old lady that has the garden with the tomatoes and everybody loves her and everybody, it's not in any way stigmatized yet anyway. But once you get the person on board, and I don't know about you, I found the best way to get people even started with a garden. Somebody comes over and it's the middle of summer and there's that little perfect ripe Cubanelle pepper sitting on that plant, bright red, and you just pull it off and hand it to them. And then the first thing they look at you is what? I can eat it? It doesn't have to be washed and scrubbed and sprayed down with vinegar or whatever. No, there's nothing on that that's going to hurt you. This is how I eat breakfast every morning. And they bite that pepper that's warmed by the sun. And you say, you know what? Here, mix this with hand them a basil leaf. And they eat a basil leaf and a warm piece of tomato, sun-warmed tomato or sun-warmed pepper. And it's you don't have to push. How do I do this? Yeah. Well, let me tell you. And like you said, then there's going to be chickens or there's going to be ducks or there's going to be sheep. There's going to be something. There's going to be a canner. There's going to be a dehydrator. There's going to be a bigger garden. There's going to be a garden pond. There's going to be an aquaponic system. There's going to be something else that's coming.
Yes. Then it becomes a lifestyle. Then it's not just, something you do on your side. No. When you get a chicken, you're putting them up at night. And you're letting them out in the morning. And so that means you're leaving the party early. And you're saying, hey, guys, I got to go.
Take the birds.
They might laugh at you as you leave. But who's laughing that next morning when you have fresh fried eggs with a side of fried potatoes or something? Who's laughing then?
Yeah.
If you haven't,
they do keep you on the land. You do travel less. You do spend less time away from home. And then you spend less money.
Yes, and you don't have to pay taxes on the money you save, do you?
No, you don't pay taxes on money you save, and you don't have to pay taxes on the money you basically earn by feeding yourself from your land.
Yes.
And you don't have to pay taxes on how many eggs came out of the chicken's butt this week, or how much milk came out of the cow, or how much lamb went into the freezer. You don't have to pay tax on any of that.
Yeah.
So where should someone start and expand to? Like we just said, you get in a garden, you're going to go somewhere else. You think gardening probably is the best place. I wax in and out on the garden thing. If you can go somewhere else, I think that whether it's chickens or ducks, like an egg laying bird, the first 6 months and to that first egg, it's the most expensive egg you will ever see in your life, paying back that feed debt. But the nutritional density of an egg versus a bell pepper. And once you set up a system, you have infrastructure. Let's say you have a small backyard flock, 6 ducks, 6 chickens, something like that. There's not much work. There's no weeding. They eat the weeds, right? So I kind of go back and forth between small scale livestock of some sort and a garden.
Yeah. So if you're going back and forth between that, and this is what I tell folks in the book, Bill Mollison taught us with permaculture to grow right outside your door. So that's one concept. Just cultivate right outside your door. And permaculture will also teach you to count the visits of things, figure out how many times you're going to visit a garden, how many times you're going to visit a chicken, and put these, the more you visit, the closer you can put it to your house. So if you can, you're going to visit chickens twice a day. That's over 700 visits a year. Put them in your front yard. If it's socially acceptable. But and that's where I started with the book, is teaching chickens and gardening. And they make so much sense together. But if you're kind of you're starting out, or you want to know what to do next, you go a little further and you grow outside the door of your heart, and think about what you like to eat. It sounds like, you know, you have some memories of gardens, and like you want to do these peppers, and then but you know, chickens is cool because you have this protein compact egg, and maybe you're on a journey, and I say you, but I could be speaking to anybody.
Yeah, you're speaking, because I'm speaking of other people. Me, you know me, I do freaking everything. But when people say, where do I start? You know, like if you want nutrient density fast, and you can find somebody that's got some well-started pullets and they're, you know, 16 weeks old. Yeah. Like another 6 weeks and you've got nutrient density daily.
Do that all day. Don't grow kale because it's cool.
Yeah.
Because you think somebody's going to throw rotten tomatoes at you if you admit you don't like tomatoes. Because you fall into that. You think, oh, I've got to grow a tomato, or oh, I've got to grow a pepper that John was talking about. Or I see Justin loving these. You might not like chicken eggs. What if you like duck eggs? What if you don't like eggs? What if you'd just rather have chicken meat? What if you're a meat and potatoes guy? Well, you know, the beef can be a little more, you know, that's kind of a bit of a next level. So maybe you start with potatoes, and I'm talking seriously, and get rid of that shame, get rid of any pressure, and really just think about what you want. Like you're saying, hey, what if you want the more protein, and you know, you're on this health journey and you want this density? It's okay to rest the garden and focus on the chickens if you're overwhelmed and can't do them both. Or if you're trying to decide, it's okay to just do chickens. Jump right to them. Just go into the chickens.
Yeah. So the exact starting point, I think the exact starting point is less important than something and doing it. But, you know, like you said, a couple small raised beds and even a small coop and run. And every day that you go out there to tend the garden, you yank all the weeds that you need to yank for that week, and you throw those in with your chickens. And then when you go out to your garden, you follow basic design principles of permaculture. You have your little thing, all your compostable chicken scraps go in that. And when you walk out to let your birds go into the run or whatever, you dump that, you throw the weeds, then the weeds get actually taken care of. Then you actually see it when a plant's getting sick or it's being watered too much or too little, and then you take action for it. So like the birds actually move the caretaker to the garden if we co-locate them. And I've always said as close to your home as makes sense, right? Yeah. Like your chickens belong in zone 1. They don't belong in zone 5 unless you're pasturing 10,000 of them. That's not what I'm talking about.
We have some out in zone 4 if I went following the cows, but we also have definitely the ones right next to our kitchen garden. And that's why I put chickens and gardens together. You hit on it there. You might as well do them both. It's not that much more work. You're already, so I would say put your garden right there by your house, put your chickens right here, and then you're walking through to get to your chickens. You're walking through and you're weeding the garden. And then on your way to the chickens, then you throw the weeds into the chickens. And hopefully the chickens are on deep bedding, like a wood chip or something. And these is getting break down to compost over time. And then you let out the chickens. Maybe you grab the eggs, then walk back, get you some Swiss chard or something like that. If you're into that stuff, the leafy green, go into the house, fry up some Swiss chard and some fried eggs. You know, it's not that much more trouble to have both, and they complement each other. The chickens feed the garden and the gardens feed the chickens.
Yeah, and you'll find working a small garden, if you're talking about a market garden or something, there's a lot of work to it. But a family garden,
right.
If you touch it every day, it's not that much work. If you touch it on Saturdays, then it can, especially when you get into the peak of your growing season and the weeds really take off and whatever, it could, and some, maybe some pests come in that need some manual control or something. It could seem like a lot of work. But if every morning you're out there and, there's a tomato hornworm, take the knife and draw it across its back and leave it lay on the ground for the chicken to eat, and you go on about your way, it's very little labor. And we've been talking about chickens, and we've mentioned ducks a few times. We talked about sheep. I'll throw out, and I did a show on this recently, for people that want to grow meat, one of the best animals in the world, especially small scale people, when they're sitting here going, I'm glad Justin has a cow, but on my half acre, that's not going to happen. Muscovy ducks. Yeah. Muscovy ducks are freaking phenomenal. They rear their own babies. You only get eggs about half the year, but when you're getting them, they're like volcanoes. And a drake, like a well-grown out drake, is going to dress out at like 11 pounds. Mm-hmm. And 2 adults will split a half a breast and be full. I mean, they're a fantastic animal. And I think the beauty, like people mentioned quail when we were talking, people mentioned rabbits. What works for you, and how do you design it into your lifestyle, right?
Yeah. I mean, we don't like the taste of rabbit. I mean, I like the idea of rabbits, but it's all dark meat, and just we don't get really thrilled about the taste. We'd just rather focus on beef or lamb or something.
Yeah, I like the idea of rabbits. I love eating rabbit. Like in my household, everybody fights over the legs and thighs of the chicken, right? Nobody wants the breast. So we're good with the dark meat. I don't like the work of the rabbit, right? Like it gets 1,000 degrees here in the summer, and everybody that talks about them says, oh, they're fine. And then, you see videos of people throwing 10 ice bottles so the rabbit doesn't die of heat or whatever. And I'm like, I don't need that other thing in my life. Now, if I have a neighbor that wants to raise them, I will totally swap some delicious eggs and Muscovy breast for a few rabbits. And that's the design, right?
That's why people like you, Jack, because you're like Greg Judy. You're no nonsense. And we all want to be that. We all want to be We all want to be okay with, this is what I like, and that's okay. And you may like that, and that's okay. We all need to get into that mentality. We'd all get along better if we'd accept other people's preferences and not necessarily accept, that might not be the right word, but tolerate other ideas and say, okay, yeah, that works for you. Hey, I like the Muscovy, and it probably doesn't eat a lot of grain, right? Like you could probably do a lot of grass on that too. So you're talking
in fact, if you're doing cattle, you can literally run Muscovies with your cattle, and they'll make a living on, what they can get in the pasture. They'll also make a living on what they can get out of the cow patties.
Yeah.
They'll go right into a cow patty, but they'll wait a couple of days until it starts to attract flies, and they'll break the fly cycle.
Yeah.
Right. And they'll pick up seed and stuff that the cow passes through, because the cow's going to do a really good job of digesting the grass, but it's going to get some seed head and stuff, and it's going to pass that through. There's even commercial operations, like they've done studies, like commercial dairy, and they are feeding grain, obviously, in those things, but they put like 5 Muscovy ducks per cow right in the milking barns. And they completely annihilate the fly problem, and they feed them almost nothing because they're so busy eating the spilled grain and eating whatever, fly larvae come up or what have you.
Yeah. I don't know if Morgan Gold's still in chat, but he is a big advocate of geese for this reason, because they can do even more than ducks. I don't know about Muscovy. I don't know if we're comparing them to Muscovy.
They're like goose ducks, man. They're like halfway in between,
They can eat so much. It's not necessarily in our culture to eat geese. We used to have the Christmas goose, and kind of a more European, and then we come to America, and the abundant bird is the turkey, so it kind of switches over to turkey. But just thinking about what is close to your heart, and it might be what you like to eat, like taste, but it might be what we're getting at here too. There's an element of security or sustainability that might factor into it. Joy of husbandry. Do you enjoy going out and working with pigs? I love working with pigs. I love petting a pig. It's like a brick on sticks. They're just so fun. They eat all my crud, even the cow manure. You want to talk about eating cow manure? The pig will eat 30% of the cow manure because 30% of it is undigested. So I have a joy with that. I see what you're saying with the rabbits. There's joy. Lily, that's your thing. You do the rabbits. If they die, it's on you. It's a good learning experience for you. That's all you have no interest.
Yeah. And then, like you mentioned geese, and we just had a commenter mention geese there. I love goose. I think it's one of the best tasting meats you can get. I think the yield on a gosling to a young harvest goose at about 11 pounds in 11 weeks, like a pound a week on grass, is awesome. The trade-off, they're not as good, especially our modern breeds, at mothering their own. They don't have a high hatch rate. You throw Muskovies out there, you get about half-sized bird on your girls, but you do nothing. You do literally nothing. One of your girls disappears. She thinks you got eaten. I don't know how they do it, but they avoid coyotes and they hide under a bush somewhere. And one day, here comes one mama out with like 24 little peeps following her. And out of that 24, 23 will live. And you do no work. But not everybody wants Muscovy ducks around. There's trade-offs to everything. If they can get on your porch, they'll poop. and they poop way more than regular ducks. I don't know why. And when they're pissed off, I think they actually literally have the ability to make their poop smell worse. Yeah. Like, because when they're like upset with you, they'll drop one and it's like a skunk, man. It's like, what have you done? But it's basically a wild bird that you just keep around. And so that works for some people. It doesn't work for others. Cattle, I think, are amazing if you have the land for it. That's another thing I want to ask you from the notes I have from your submission here. Why do you think there is so many people right now villainizing cattle?
Ooh, gosh. Now, the why they're villainizing that, Jack, I have no idea. I mean, maybe you know more about that as I could. I guess could it be because you can actually market chemical beef better? I mean, it could be patented. Maybe perhaps it's a bigger business, something tangible like that, like pharmaceuticals. Like, are we really going to push herbs as a solution because there's no one company with lots of budget to push comfrey as a healing salve, or whatever. So maybe that's it. You got any?
Yeah, I think it's multi-pronged. I think first we have to break the groups of people doing it into two groups. We have to break the leaders and the followers apart. So the leaders are the Bill Gateses of the world, the Monsanto will now bear Conagras of the world, big ag, big industry. I believe big farm is involved with it. I mean, you can't say Gates without seeing the overlap of ag and farm. Yeah. And I think, and you have your oligarchs, you have your technocrats, and you have your government types. And they like things that are quantifiable, storable, movable, controllable. And so I can say that there's, X bushels of grain here with a tax base of Y. And if you look back through the history of agriculture and society, even back to the Egyptians, even before that, Mesopotamia, that's, grain bills were literally the first currency. That you would have this bill from the pharaoh, and if you took it to the grains, you could get, a basket of wheat with it. And you would take that piece of paper from me versus taking a basket of grain, because you knew you'd get that grain. And you knew if I gave you that and that was a counterfeit, you would just say, here's who I got it from. And they would come take me and run a spear through me and hang me up in the street, right? Like, that is the history of agriculture and grain. And it could be stored and quantified and very easy to understand. Where a cow just is in a field. A cow is, in a lot of ways, a cow is very reminiscent of the buffalo that were in this country before colonization. And, you can literally, over time, we could develop cattle to the point where they don't even really need us very much. Yeah. And that's very scary for somebody that wants to control a society. That's really scary. Here's an interesting thing that if you're not from Fort Worth or haven't visited Cowtown during they call it the cattle roundup, but it's like 7 longhorns get walked through. The guy tells a story of this, and I'll do the abbreviated version. Back after the Civil War, there were so many longhorns in South Texas that the value of a full-size, full-grown beef longhorn, which is some of the best beef available now, it certainly was at the time, was about $1 a head.
Wow.
But they were all around down by San Antonio. And I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but it's not exactly a jungle. It's not exactly known for heavy rainfall. It's kind of like in between steppe and desert, right? But these cattle were making a living down there. They were so well adapted. And sort of everybody that was farming cattle just kind of left their cattle and went to fight the war. So now you've got all these cattle down here. There's no railroad line. There's no real roads.
Yeah.
Right. But if you went down and this is how, sort of a lot of the early cattle drives, how they started. If you went down with some cowboys and rounded up a herd and got them to Fort Worth, where there was a recognized cattle drive line, and it was up into like Kansas or Missouri or somewhere, but it was still no railroad, you could get $5 a head. And once that began, then they said we should put a railroad in. And then it went to once they had the rail in, you could get $11 a head just by driving these livestock, these longhorns from kind of around San Antonio and south and central Texas up to Fort Worth. And there were literally nobody owned them. There was they were just free ranging. Now, when I think about that, and I think about instead of them free ranging, I think of thousands, tens of thousands, maybe millions of small acreage homesteaders all raising some beef. And, maybe I'm not going to raise beef on my 3 acres, but the guy with 100 acres down the road from me, he's not going to be a big commercial rancher. He does rotational grazing. He's got his stuff together. I buy a half beef from him every year. All of a sudden, how little do we need these people that want control? And the cow is one of the number one things. So what they do is they tell the followers that are, repeating the villainization, the methane is killing the planet and boiling the oceans. And of course, those people are so programmed. They're so nihilistic at this point. I know you saw it at Permaculture Voices, people saying things like, we were sitting by the bay and we were like 12 feet above the bay. And they're like, people don't understand, man, the purple breathers. In a couple of years, that water's going to be up here. And you're like, what are you talking about? We're talking about 12 feet of ocean rise. But where do you get this? And they have no idea. But I don't think they're bad people. I think they believe this because they've been taught to believe this. Anybody a little younger than you, especially, has been just nailed with it since kindergarten and school. So then the cows are evil because they fart methane and they're going to boil the ocean. Yeah. And we have to rely on people who, have little girl arms and a pot belly like Bill Gates to tell us how to be healthy.
I know.
Right? And that whole thing all plays together. And I don't think any of it can really be separated because there's so much power in the ability to produce. Literally, one cow will feed a family for a year. That. A good sized cow will provide all the nutrition a family of four could possibly need for a year. You literally need nothing else. You've got bone broth, you've got fat, you've got other products that come off that can be used like leather. Like it literally lets us live like sort of a modern Native American or, modern indigenous people, I guess it'd be better because people didn't just live like this in North America. They lived like this all over the place. And if we're going to start saying cattle are going to boil the ocean, should we go get some M2s, mount them up in some things, start driving around the plains of Africa and kill all the wildebeest and all the zebras and all the, the water buffalo and all the Cape buffalo? What about the 50, 60 million bison that used to roam out in this place where I live? There were bison everywhere here before they were shot off to control the Native Americans. So I see it's like history repeats itself in a weird way. It's not the same. So somebody's going to say, I'm going to say we're like the modern Indians or something. Not. But I'm saying they controlled the Native Americans by destroying the buffalo. And I think if they can destroy homesteading and meat production by homesteaders and vilify us, it's like reining back in that free people ideology.
I can see what you're saying. You're saying they it's not necessarily so much that is even the truth. It's just they want more control. I can definitely speak to why the cow isn't causing that problem, and because I can only look at it from my perspective and visiting people like Joel Salatin and Greg Judy, people who are doing this management style of moving the cows and not having too many per acre. The land is actually getting better, not worse. So they're getting more from it. And what you were speaking to, it could feed a whole family. Well, I was actually walking out here. I actually had a guest. It's been a year or so ago. We're outside and they said, I used to be a vegan and now they're carnivore. And he said, did you know that actually the most vegan thing you can do is actually eat meat? And I said, what? How is that? Jack, you might know where I'm going with this. I'm thinking, and I thought about it. And I didn't want him to give me the answer. I thought, how is eating meat the most vegan thing you can do? And I said, okay, you got me. How is it? I couldn't think of it. And he said, like you, if one beef can feed an entire family. Well, if one beef ends up being one steer raised to weigh is going to be about 400 pounds in your freezer. A man would eat 2 pounds of beef a day if that's what he needs. That's 200 days. So one animal could sustain me for 200 days. That animal raised this way is moved around regularly. There's no soil being tilled, so there's no microbial life being mass murdered in the billions. There's no monoculture systems wrecking entire ecosystems. So, let's consider their life's important too, wild animals and stuff like that. If we're into the love of the animal life, we have to consider the wild animals, right? So then these wild animals are being displaced for these monocultures, and then that ends up being heavily sprayed, and that's getting in our water systems and affecting them and end up affecting humans. And oh my goodness, don't get me started. So, and then I could see it. I could see how then if somebody doesn't want to take a life, take one, as opposed and that one creating an ecosystem. hosting flies. You could go micro, you could go even micro than that, and because we're not having to destroy open fields, you have ecosystems for your wild animals. So eating the one animal that can reproduce itself and replace itself 10x is better than just straight up.
I see that, because I think I agree with vegans more than they think I do, because I'll make fun of them sometimes or whatever. But when a vegan gives their reason for being a vegan, there's some that really think they're healthier. And I just say, look at the averages of the two extremes and make your own choice. But most of the time, I hear about the plight of animals. And when they start explaining how horrible is these animals are killed, they're not just talking about them being killed. They're talking about their entire lifestyle. How that animal lives its entire life. And so when you want to talk when you talk to me and you tell me how bad a CAFO is, whether it's for pigs or cows or chickens, or, these chicken houses where you see these trucks going down the road with all the chickens stacked on each other, shitting on each other. You see these videos when people sneak in and film them, where when they go to harvest the chickens, they're taking front end loaders full of dead birds out before they harvest the live ones. You don't have to convince me you're right about that. But I think a lot of times vegans don't realize there is an alternative. Yeah. Right. There's an alternative to that. It's exactly what you and I and people like us do and what we advocate. And when they look at it that way, if you look at total life. Yeah. So I don't know if it's the most vegan thing, but I think for many vegans, it's the most ethics consistent thing that they could really do. Because if they're really worried about animal life and the environment, I can manage a system with cattle, and I can make it more vibrant every year and more diverse every year. And I don't know if you've ever watched a show called Yellowstone, but there's this comes up in one of the episodes, and this rancher, he's talking to this activist vegan chick, and he said, have you ever seen what happens when you plow a bean field or wheat field? He's like, you kill every deer, every mouse, every vole, everything. Every microorganism is destroyed. And I don't have the speech memorized, but it's something like that. So he said, I guess the question in the end is, how cute does an animal have to be before you're not willing to take its life?
Exactly.
And she kind of sees the way they're ranching, and they're ranching like not necessarily rotational grazing the way we did intensively, but very much old school, move the cattle around, and the cows are living, and she sees how much they love it. She doesn't become a convert, but the point is made.
Yeah, exactly. And I would, in that vein, I would encourage a vegan who is maybe for that moral issue, at least eat roadkill. I mean, let's get some animal protein in there somehow. Yeah. I mean, animals just going to rot on the side of the road. I mean, if you see the deer, I don't think you're making a compromise there.
I don't think so. I think you're eating the most sustainable red meat on the planet if you're eating roadkill deer.
We travel to America. They have programs. I forget if it was in Maine or Alaska or both, or in other states. You can get on a call list. Yeah. If the moose gets hit, the police will go to that call list, and you can come and harvest that animal. Yeah, I think it's great.
It's technically illegal to pick up a roadkill deer in Texas, but I've literally had a cop help me put one in my truck. Right? And I talked to him, and I talked to my brother-in-law's a cop, and they're like, I guess a game warden, if he wanted to be a dick, could cite you. He's like, but we can't. We don't even have a code in our book for that. No. Right? We don't have. There's nothing to cite you for. If you pulled over sideways on the road and blocked traffic, could write you a ticket for that. But if you pull off the road and safely remove the animal, first of all, they're like, well, now we don't have to worry about it, right? Because somebody's going to call the non-emergency number, the local police force, and be like, there's this thing, and it's rotting, and it's stinking, and there's maggots. So, I mean, I pick them up all the time. Now, sometimes they're not salvageable.
You got to get it fresh. We should say to everybody, it better be fresh.
And how much damage was done. Like I found some that had less damage than a gunshot, and I've looked at some and went, yeah, vultures get this one. Man.
Yeah, no, just when in doubt, leave it out.
Leave it out. What do you think though? Let's go back to the homesteading here for a couple more, and then if you have time, we can take some audience questions. What do you think newbies kind of miss when they start homesteading, or maybe have unrealistic expectations? They look at stuff like we do. Yes. And I think you're good like me. You tend to show your bad days and your good days. But a lot of channels, a lot of Instagram people, they always show the perfect, hand hearts over the chicken eggs or whatever, and everything's always fun. Like, it's not all fun and games, right? And especially in the beginning, it's harder than people think.
That's what people miss. And it's like missing the forest for the trees type of thing. I guess that's the right way to say it. I don't know. But yeah, you come into this for the animals decorating the landscape and the unicorns farting rainbows, and you create this grandiose, oh, we're all sitting together down as a family to eat this. But really what happens is the chickens crap on your steps going into the house, the bugs eat the cabbage, and your kid doesn't want to eat the green beans or something. That's the reality. But and then what happens is you find yourself in this grind. You find yourself in, so for me, the cows don't take a break, Jack. You know this. They don't care it's Christmas. They don't care it's Saturday or Sunday. They don't care if your arm's broken or if you've got COVID or the flu. They don't care. You still got to get it done. And so what I think has happened here, coming into this experience, I know people come for the dream, but I think Joel Salatin was telling me, I think most homesteads fail within the first 7 years. So there's going to be this separation and this tension. And what I'm going to tell you right now is you better learn to like the struggle. I could hold this up. There's a little reflection there, but there's calluses on my hands. There's scars from fixing certain things. Or you're knocking a fence post. I've poked my eye with a fence post. Got reactive arthritis from handling raw poultry and getting some manure on my hands or something, and it ended up in my mouth. So it's you came for the dream, but you better learn to love the blood, sweat, and tears, because it ends up being all about the process. If you watch our YouTube show, you'll see it. We're not eating the entire show. I mean, who would want to watch that? No, you're seeing the processes. You're seeing me build the crop garden. You're seeing me put up the pole barn. You're seeing a little glimpse of milking. What I found out, Jack, is why you're missing the point if you're just skipping to the dream, to the sitting at the table and eating it. Because I've learned when I'm sitting down to that table and eating it, it's not necessarily the taste that makes it more enjoyable. Because sure, it tastes better, but not that much better. I mean, let's just be real. It can be, certainly an egg is better, but there are some things that maybe are even better just buying them in the store as far as taste is concerned. But what made that meal so special is not just, I thought it was just, oh, not only did I know that story, I was part of that story. I thought it was that. It's not. What makes that meal so special is all those obstacles that you overcame to get there. You overcame struggles. You overcame hard times. You might have to eat with your left hand. If I was left-handed, I have a splint. Somehow I got a splinter under my nail and it's not coming out. You might have to eat with your other hand because you got injured because you got a splinter in it or a blister.
Yeah.
Actually a blister on this. And if I looked at your hands, you probably.
I was laughing when you were saying that, and because earlier you mentioned comfrey, and I'm like, if anybody's ever wondered why I'm such a fan of learning to make salves and comfrey and plantain and chickweed, like there's your answer. I go through tubs of the shit every summer. When down here in Texas, I had an intern one time, and he said, after being here like 2 weeks, and he came in summer when everything's out, he's like, everything here wants to bite me, stab me, or stick me, or sting me, right? That was like his 4 things. Like, look, like if you're wearing thin-soled shoes, we have oaks. They're not even thorns, but when they fall, the little twigs on them are so sharp that they'll go through like a flip-flop.
Yeah.
Right. There's sand spurs were everywhere until we got, more fertility on the property. Like it can be rough, and it is kind of hard. I think one of the biggest things that people can do, though, to avoid failing is to understand what to stop doing very quickly. Like, oh, this is not time for this, or this isn't going to work. I know people, for instance, like they're going to get into rabbits, and they're not going to do meat rabbits. They're going to breed rabbits. So they're going to sell the rabbits. And they have all these rabbits, and they have no rabbits for sale because they're not ready to do it yet. And they know they're not ready to do it yet. And they got these expensive rabbits. They're taking care of the rabbits every day, and the rabbits are an expense. And it's like, okay, if the rabbits are worth as much as you say they are, and they're kind of getting close to breeding age and all, and you're not ready for them yet, sell the freaking rabbits
Yeah.
Get everything else in place and then go back and reconsider adding. And rabbits are just an example of something like that. I see people all the time. They're doing 80 things at once.
Yes.
And they can't actually make any of them work. Do a thing. Get a system down. If you want to combo, like we said, birds and gardens are great. Get that down. Understand that. Become good at it. Then add the skill of starting your own plants instead of buying your plants. Add the skill of composting. Incorporate the birds into the composting tank. Now you got that. Now you can think about something else.
Yeah.
And if people do that, and if when they start doing something, if it's not going to be profitable, get rid of it. I mean, you were here and we had like 150 birds when you were here. Yeah. But the price of the food went up. My wife started taking care of the grandkids. She wasn't working the sales channel. When I did the math and we weren't making money, most of the ducks left. Not because I didn't like ducks anymore, because I'm not in the business of losing money. On paper, sure, but in reality, I'm not in that business.
Yeah. No, you should do that. That's a very good point.
Control yourself, I guess, is the way to look at it.
I tell people, write out the list of the things you want to do. Like, you have these dreams. Let's say it's 10 things. Oh, I want to do. Jack said ducks are cool. Justin said chickens and gardens. We got 3. They build up. Oh, I want honey. Oh, I'm supposed to get the honeybee. I need to get some fruit. Write out all these things. And then, so these are your dream goals, and 10, 12 of them. And what's going to happen is you only have so much time, money, and energy. And that's actually a good thing. If you only have an hour a day, you could probably cancel your gym membership, get an hour a day, and then maybe a half a day on the weekend. You got 10 hours a week. For chicken and eggs, you could grow half or more of your own food on a quarter of acre or less in just 100 days, and just over the summer, like really quick. And so you've got this list of all these things, all these dreams, but then you do have to consider your considerations. Do you have half an hour a day, an hour a day? And then you know what that does? If you'll force yourself to say, what is the most important? What's the most bang for my buck? Even if you're not raising them to sell them, what's the most bang for my buck? Prioritize that list. You want to do all of them. Yeah. So you shouldn't have a problem being okay with, okay, I know gardens are I can go to work, leave the garden. I can even go away for the weekend. Chickens those two go good together. I'm going to do chickens. Even if you end there and you couldn't tap into your ostriches and your emus, your llamas, on all these other 7 things, bees, guess what's going to happen? You know the 80-20 rule, Jack. Yeah. You're a businessman. That 20% is going to get you 80% of your results. So you need to know your goal. If your goal is to grow half of your own food by the end of the summer, you better be putting chickens and gardens up there in that priority list. And
and what I'll kind of add to that is maybe you'll find something you're awesome at. And because you're awesome at it, or your land is perfect for it, that you can produce more of it than you need. If you're not going to be in the honey and beeswax and bees business, if you're only doing a few hives for yourself, how much honey does a family need? I'm sure there's a beekeeper who would love, a sack of garlic in return for a couple quarts of honey, or some really great eggs. Or maybe you're a mead maker like I am, and you make awesome mead. And you can tell that beekeeper, like the guy I've talked about from my hometown in Pennsylvania, Buddy Shoemaker, the winemaker, tell you what, you give me as much honey as you want, and I will make it in mead. I'll give you half of the mead back. Right? There's always ways that you can pull barter into this, because I think what's happened is we're so in a quest to be our ancestors, we've forgotten who they were. Your ancestors didn't do all this shit. They were gentlemen farmers. They had a job or a trade, and they had, they grew a patch of tobacco or a patch of corn, and they had a couple of livestock here and there. And then they had more than they could use of those things. And then they went to their neighbor and they said, hey, what do you have? And instead of trading silver coins, they traded milk for eggs. Right. That was how our ancestors lived. They didn't ever try to do anything. They built community.
I tell people, look at your receipt. What are you spending money on, or what do you want to spend money on? Honey ain't anywhere up in there. And people were going crazy for like getting off the grid and going off the grid. But if I was coming at it, and I was coming at a financial perspective, power bill's $100. My food bill's $2,000. Which one do you think I should a month? Which one do you think I should start doing first? It's going to make more sense to start trying to grow your own food. And honey, I might spend $200 on a year, but I'm spending $10,000 on beef. Which one do you think I should go at first? So look at that receipt. I mean, if you have junk food on there, it's hard to grow Oreos, okay? But it's not hard to grow whole foods like meats, vegetables, or fruits. So are you eating a lot of dairy? Let's start going there. That's how I say grow what's close to your heart. You know, where your money is, there your heart is. Where your treasure is, there your heart is. So imagine your money, a little string around it, wrapped to your heart. Just look where your money's going. And if you're at peace with that, I mean, you might be spending money on stuff that you're not for or whatever, and you're trying to quit. But if you're enjoying that, then that's how you know where your heart is. That's how you know what you should focus on, I think, and start going at. That's how you know what to then prioritize on top of that list.
Yeah, I completely agree. Do what's easy that's going to offset expense, and do what's going to offset the greatest expense.
Yeah.
So like both of those rules apply, because if it's really easy, but it's not that big of an expense offset, it's still really easy and it's something. And then if it's now I got to put between these two things, like you said, what's going to do is putting $30,000 worth of solar panels on my roof, going to put an ROI in my pocket before running 2 door per sheep? And the answer is no, it's not. It's going to take me decades to get that money for those solar panels back. Decades. I would have off-grid capability, and I've got that, but I'm buying a capability. I'm not getting a direct ROI. 2 door per lambs, man, you know, there's an ROI there. When I can, you know, pay for a portion of the labor that my handyman does for me in eggs.
Yeah.
There's an ROI there, you know, there's nothing wrong with seeking the ROI. And I think it's really one of the things that can make it worth it. I mean, when you look at all this, we call today's show The Hard Truth. Do you feel like it really is worth it for the average person?
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of starting small and failing small and answering that for yourself. So I'm not telling you to right away get out of sell your city home and go to the country. No, I'm telling you to first, if you're doing nothing, get a container garden like we did on the tour, Jack. We had a 5-inch terracotta pot, soil in it, and we grew a basil. We grew a basil seed. And we started in Iowa, and we ended up harvesting it in Wyoming, and had basil on our pizza and had food from the land. So see, and that's it too. Like, you know, maybe you need to just be more supportive of this thing. Maybe you hate it. Maybe you get that plant. Maybe you try these chickens and you hate it. And maybe you need to do like Jack's saying, and like you're saying, Jack, and support the farmer that is going to be better than you, more efficient. And you're good at something. And it maybe you said you had a handyman. What if you're a handyman? I mean, what if you started
absolutely
some services for this? We're not saying this is all, but you might also, I would encourage you to try it. What's it going to hurt to try it? A pot or 4 chickens. It's not going to hurt. You can liquidate them easy or eat them easy enough.
Easier than people think too, man. When we decided to get rid of our chickens, we sold our laying birds for $25 a bird. Wow. There's no way a 1.5-year-old red sex link chicken is worth $25 for meat.
Yeah.
But somebody that wants to start and they want eggs now.
Yeah.
Boom. The guy I got my newest Muskovies from, I paid $20 for the girls and $35 for the males. And he said, the only reason I sold you for the males for $35 is because you bought so many. I'm like, what do you usually sell them for? He's like, $45.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who the hell pays $45 for a male Muscovy? He's like, Laotians. This was a Mexican dude, right? He's like, Laotians. I'm like, what? He goes, I'm in an old school neighborhood here. That's why nobody bothers me. He had like about a half acre that he had the birds on. And he's like, we have a lot of minority communities, and we have a Laotian community, and they want a big bird for family meals. I'm like, so they buy it for meat. He's like, yeah. I'm like, do you process? He's like, hell no. They come and they bring a box or a cage, and they get the bird, and they take it home, and they do all the work. He's selling them for $45 a piece. Now he's not going to sell 1,000.
No,
but he can sell, 5 or 6 a month all year round.
Yeah.
And then these feed costs are gone. You know, there's always ways. And
Yeah.
if you're a handyman and you know that guy, hey, you know, maybe he needs some stuff done. I've hired people to do stuff I could do all the time.
Yeah,
Do you know why? My time's better spent doing this.
Yes. Yeah.
Back to ROI. So I'll hire that guy. If that guy wants to get paid in, you know, I talked to somebody recently that was talking about getting into Muskovies, and I'm like, I don't have any now. I just, you know, re-upped my genetics. But by the end of summer, I'm going to have more than I want to process for myself. And if they want to barter, I'll barter. Maybe they don't. Maybe they want to eat them. Maybe they don't want them for a flock bird. But you know, I'm like, I know a processor you can take them to. They process them for $8 a piece. It's really cheap compared to processing ducks and chickens. Is totally different, right? It's a lot more work. The feathers are harder to get off.
Yeah.
There's always some way to make it worth it.
That's
right.
You
know, maybe you're good at wood turning and you're doing crafts, but then you use the money you earn from your little wood shop to buy from local producers, you know, or to barter with local producers.
People get, if that's their problem, they're scared to get in. Like they need to think about, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? They need to think through that. That can help them overcome the fear. I also think probably a lot of your listeners are you probably got a lot of experienced people in the audience too. But so I would encourage them to always question. Even this year, we've been growing ducks for meat, pecans, and geese. We've been doing the Christmas goose for the last couple of years. But as we make our hatchery order, I said, Rebecca, we still into geese? And she's kind of like, you know, we kind of had fun. Maybe I'd like to eat a boar's head next Christmas, you know, or pizza, and that needs to be okay. Yeah. And don't feel like, oh, because you once were into something that you have to continue that.
To stay there. Yeah. Don't do that.
Like grain journey too, where we're trying to eliminate the grain and eat more things. And I'm getting excited about beef. There's a lot of beef recipes. There's not a whole lot of duck recipes. We were doing ducks. I'm kind of tired of duck tacos, and share something more with me about. But the pecans, you know, after talking with you, I need to keep that journey alive in my heart and open mind, because it might be that, hey, maybe I don't get pecan. Maybe I get some Muscovy and try not feeding them any grain at all, and just 4 or 5. And then I'm the duck
just
once
clip their wings, dude. They're not like regular domestic ducks. They go where they want, including on your roof or on your pergola over your pool. And then they do what ducks do, or they fly into your pool. You got to clip the wings on Scovies and be careful of the claws, man. They got claws like hot. They don't come after you with them, but when you pick them up, man, it's on. But check this out. You see the comment there from Tiger Lily?
Let's do it.
She's getting $50 each for laying hens and laying ducks. So birds that are already laying, she's getting $50 a bird.
Wow.
That's insane. And you're not going to sell 1,000, but you don't need to. Hell, I sell goldfish, dude, once in a while. I'll sell a really pretty looking 9-cent goldfish that grew up to about this big. You put it on Craigslist as an Asian heirloom carp. And some yuppie that has a water garden will pay $50 for it. Right? There's the food for that fish pond for a year.
Nice.
There's always creative ways. So I want maybe answer some questions, but I also want, before we do that, I don't know how much time you have, but this book here, The Rooted Life. Tell people about this book and why you wrote this book.
Well, I wrote that book like what we talked about in the beginning. I've found this lifestyle to be just so fulfilling. And I really think there is something to be said about completing your joy when you can share something you enjoy with others. If you ever watch a funny movie or whatever, when you laugh, notice what happens. You look at the other person and you laugh together. You want to look and laugh together. And so that's what I'm doing. And I've done it traditionally through YouTube videos and then my member area, Abundance Plus, but then now a book, Jack, because books. As a filmmaker, I used to prize and sell DVDs. Where are DVDs? They're gone. But I think books are here to stay, and books are off grid. And if we had an internet shortage or somebody took over it or whatever, we still got our books. And I think and I'm a voracious reader. I probably read a book every 2 weeks, all kinds of books. And that is why I also have, when I first started 15 years ago, we turned to the books, And for us, for gardening and chickens, it was Joel Salatin's Pasture Poultry Profit, Elliot Coleman's New Organic Grower, and Harvey Ustry's Small Scale Poultry Flock. Great books. Oh, and Bill Mollison's Intro to Permaculture. So that's a stack of books about this tall.
Yeah.
And I read them all, and it's all great, and I recommend them all. But if you're just getting going, or you just want to, I think you'll enjoy it, Jack. Even
I have been. I was going to say, like, there's two reasons to get this. One, it's inspirational and educational.
Yeah.
The other is this is a freaking coffee table book, folks.
Yes.
The pictures, the illustrations. This is something that your normie friends will pick up and look through. And they may even ask you, do you really do this? Can this really be done? Can people actually do this? It's very well done, Justin.
Yeah,
it really is.
15 years plus a stack of books, and said, let's get it down to something you can read. The Audible version is like 4 hours and 15 minutes. So theoretically, you could read that book in one evening and be ready to go. And I've consolidated and straight to the point in 6 of the chapters, and the other chapters is a lot of fun and lifestyle stuff. And yeah, and you're going to enjoy the pictures. Those pictures, I don't think I've said this anywhere. Once a month for 12 months, we took photo shoots. So that's the Rhodes family farm in a year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you guys did a great job with that. People really do need to check out if they haven't seen your YouTube channel, like the amount of content on there and the interviews with some really switched on people. And what I love about that, it lets you do, I consider myself like a practicer of Jeet Kune Do homesteading, like Bruce Lee, take what you want and leave everything else behind. Yeah. Like I go look at something like what Sepp Holzer does, and I'm like, I'm not going to do 100 acres in the Alpine mountains. It's not going to happen. But I can take little pieces that I learned from a Sepp Holzer or a Joel Salatin or a Greg Judy or a Justin Rhodes or a Ben Falk. And you did a great job of getting that information together. Let's do a little kind of lightning round here on and answering some of this. This wasn't really a question, but I think it's a good point. Margaret Oliver is basically saying about how cheap seeds are, that she can get seeds sometimes that are old for next to nothing, and you still get some germination. I've seen people post pictures. They go to Walmart and there's like all the seeds at the end of the season, and they'll get like a bag of seeds for $5 because they got to get rid of them.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? Ron says, what about selling shares for meat production on larger animals? So if you want to market and share, but you don't want to go USDA route where you have to do it for individual cuts. So, you can sell, I don't know, third shares in a beef or half shares in a beef.
Yeah. Jack also spoke earlier about harvesting that deer and the police officer helping you get in it. I mean, sometimes you got to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it doesn't agree with the law.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think like this is actually not that hard. When I buy my half share of beef, I don't touch that cow, but yet they're not doing USDA. So we have a state approved slaughterhouse and processor that I use for other things. Same one that my beef guy uses. And he basically takes the cow down there and he can sell it in quarters. So there could be 4 of us. It's usually 2 with me. And they'll call me up after they've processed it and they've let it hang and gave it its hang time. And they'll say, Mr. Spirko, how do you want your half processed? We'll go through all the cuts and everything. And then I go pick it up and I sign for it as the owner of that part of the cow. So you can do it. You don't even have to really break the law. You just have to understand it and do what I call status jujitsu, right? You have to like use the law to your favor. I think that's something more people should do. This one's directly for you from GK Farms. Do you reseed your pasture when you started or return from TGAFT?
No, man, I just got the cows on it. One thing I do that's interesting is we are clearing some forests. Joel Salatin will say he clears his forest. He's foresting his pastures, pasturing his forest. I'm doing the same thing. We'll run pigs in there, and they help break out the underbrush. Well, first we'd run cows in there, and then sheep, and then pigs. And the pigs also dig. They dig with their snout. And what we will do is go into because it's not grass, but there is a seed bank there. There's seed that has been there hundreds of years that the pigs have stirred up, and now it can get air and water and it grows. But we'll speed that process up when we're going into new ground like that, we'll go to pasture seed. I think it's nature's seed or something.com. You can get like seeds according to your region and according to what you're trying to grow. And we'll get the dairy cow mix for the Southeast. I'm in North Carolina, and we'll cast that and then put down some organic straw or some unsprayed hay. And that just speeds up what nature's trying to do already.
Yeah, there is a seed bank that people don't realize. Like, I remember one of Jeff's Lawton's lessons, he was talking about how you can take a square foot of ground and burn it, take another square foot of ground and compact it, take another square foot of ground and loosen it up, all within a couple feet of each other. And you'll get different triggered germination, which means like, you don't put any seed down, and you'll get different plants because loose ground, compacted ground, and burned ground are all different germination triggers. So animal activity causes a lot of germination trigger. I know Joel Salatin, the pastor has, is amazing. He said he never put a seed down. Alan Savory goes into places there's no grass, there's no nothing. There's like you barely like there's one leaf for the cow to eat. He runs the cattle anyway, and all of a sudden stuff starts growing. So I think helping it, though, I'm a fan of doing what you do. I like helping it along. Small amount of seed behind activity. It's like work with nature, but give nature more to work with, I guess. What's Justin's view on treating sheep for parasites? Greg had some pretty interesting thoughts on this, I know.
Well, that's why I got on a waiting list for Greg's sheep, because I had some sheep die of parasites, and we don't want to treat it. I mean, we're like, Greg won't from a financial point, just because it just makes sense to have hardier sheep. So we got on the wait list because we don't want to put the chemical or herbal, for that matter, into the sheep. We just want hardy sheep. And then my view also is intensive management, not intensive healthcare. So in the winter, my sheep are on deep bedding, and that's getting refreshed, and the hay is off their bedding. So there's not that parasite pressure, so animals need to be either on deep bedding if they're staying still or moving regularly. Mm-hmm. And that can be more intense, but we don't have the healthcare issue. So good stock, the way you want to raise them. We didn't want to shoot them up with parasite meds, vaccines, whatever, organic or not, chemical or not. We just want a good hardy, and we'll do the hard thing. Greg put in the work of just letting the strong survive, and now we'll honor that too. Here we have a mom that second year she abandoned her baby, and sure, we as a homestead, Greg would never milk a lamb.
Yeah, bottle feed a baby.
We will, because we're counting on that 5 or 6 offspring to give us our 250 pounds of lamb we needed.
Sure,
so we'll bottle feed it, but you better believe we're culling that mother, where we're also eating her, and we're certainly not breeding her offspring, the fed baby. Never. So that line will end. And what's she trying to do? She's ending her line. Like people think she's being cruel. Oh, she's a bad mother. She's being cruel. Actually, I think she's picking up on weakness in her line, and she's doing a favor for her entire species, because she's making her species strong by abandoning that baby. Something was probably wrong with that baby, or somehow she senses something's wrong with her. Yeah. And she's ending her line herself. So
and there may be just something wrong with the baby that she wasn't going to be able to get. It might even be worth letting that sheep have another shot at it before you cull her, because it might be just that one offspring. You don't know, but you have to make it.
We didn't do it last year. Here, second strike, you're out.
Oh no, you're done. Done. 2 strikes, you're out. There's no 3 strikes.
And we would have never sold her offspring.
Yeah.
Or bred it.
Yeah.
No matter what, even keeping her. Because there was another one that we actually, the first time we had to pull the baby. Greg's never going to pull a baby. That mama would have died. I honor that. I respect that. We pull it because we need that meat.
Yeah.
And this next time she was just fine. It may never happen again. But even because we had to pull that baby, and she didn't have that baby completely natural on her own, we won't sell her offspring. We won't breed her offspring, but we will keep giving her chances, because we've decided in our hearts we're willing to make that much trouble for ours. It's worth it to us. My daughter gets to feed that lamb once, 2, 3. My daughter gets an everyday struggle. She has to go out there and milk that lamb. She enjoys it sometimes, but most of the time, Jack, that's
another thing to do.
three time a day job for a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
She has have more character than most people we know because she's had to do hard things every day.
Yeah, everything becomes work when it has to be done all the time. All right, and she's learning that. That's good.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would say there's people that think like you just can't do that with sheep, that you have to worm them, whatever. And I say those people need to go to South Texas. We have all these exotic sheep, Corsican rams, and other types of sheep. They run around in the wild. No one takes care of them. No one feeds them. And it actually might be a place for people to start looking at getting genetics. Honestly, because nature's done what Greg's done down there, right? Like these, they're maybe not the best meat lambs though, but it's just a point. Like clearly sheep can live without people worming them.
I haven't wormed these guys ever.
Yeah. Or they wouldn't be there, right?
Program. Greg Judy has an intense mineral program, and so do we. 16, including copper, which can be controversial for sheep. But go ahead, I'm sorry. We let them have at it. Free choice copper. I mean, you don't want to stick it into a salt lick, and they're trying to get another mineral.
I got you.
Overdose on another mineral. You see,
it's almost like they know what they need.
Yeah, they do know what they need. They don't have TV. They're in tune with their body. And that's all they have to do all day is eat and figure out and be in tune with what they need.
Ron says, what about growing for bartering? Unless you have something to add, I think we hit that pretty solid. Yeah. Susan says, do you find electric netting being good predator deterrent?
I think it's great. I mean, we do a guard goose for our chickens. And then we do electric net. That electric net is getting most ground predators, and the guard goose is getting the aerial predators for us, the hawks and the owls. And that's 99% of your problem. And if you shut the birds up at night, that's 99% of your problems solved.
Okay. Can chickens help with bugs? I think it depends. They're not going to hurt, but I think that maybe the value of a chicken for insect control, especially flies and stuff like that, might be a little bit overstated. So like fruit flies and all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Another one on sheep. We covered that.
You flick off bugs off your garden and throw them into the chickens.
Yeah. Then you got something. They won't eat squash bugs. And if they do, they'll do it once. I grabbed a leaf off a squash plant, had a bunch of squash bugs on it, and I threw it over the fence to the chickens. And a bunch of them looked at it. They all looked at it like, I don't know what the hell that is. Like something about it told them it was bad. And one decided it was going to eat it. And it ran away and it was making chicken sounds, but it literally sounded like, no, God, no. Like it must burn or something. I felt bad.
In Swiss Family Robinson, I know it's a fictional story, but they would throw food that they didn't know was safe. If it was safe or not, they throw it to chickens. And the monkeys. If the chickens and the monkeys would eat it, well, then it's safe for humans.
Then it's safe for them to eat. What is a better breed of chicken for egg production and insect control? I think we kind of hit on the insect control. They do what they do, and they all eat bugs. I think with egg production, like birds tend to be meat birds and egg birds, and you have dual purpose birds. And if it's dual purpose, it doesn't really excel at either. And if you just want eggs, I mean, it's hard for me. I don't know how you feel, but like it's really hard to beat like your production reds and things like that.
Yeah, red stars, black stars. These birds that are hybrids that have been bred to produce eggs. If that's really what you want, it's hard to beat that. I'm running those because it's super high efficiency.
Gotcha. Did Rebecca have the same homesteading goals when y'all first started, or was there any reluctant spouse syndrome there?
Oh, that's good because it goes the other way. This was all Rebecca's idea. I mean, besides, she's getting into the health thing. When we really got intense with the gardening, I mean, we spoke like we started gardening some, but when we really she had the idea, let's just go all out and do a market farm. And so I'm reluctant. I'm like, good luck, do that. I'm kind of running a camp thing and doing my own thing. And then she got pregnant and got really sick. And then I had to follow through for all these customers she had gained. And so I had to follow through these vegetables and got on board. But I know what you're asking. You might want to get a spouse on board. And I talk about that in the book. And one thing I say, and it's probably not the answer you want to hear, I'll say to you, if you want to get your spouse on board, sometimes I'll say, don't. And let's start there because let's be aware that you were not on this journey probably when you met.
Yeah.
You got to be real sensitive.
You're the one that changed, right?
You're the one that's changing, right, Jack? And who knows, they might be into Monday Night Football. And so I think you need to start, and they might be on some forum saying, how do I get my spouse excited about the games? So maybe you need to sit down with them at Monday Night Football. Now maybe at the commercials or something, maybe you can jot your little plan. Do what you can within the perimeters of that relationship, because I think relationships are more important.
I agree.
And they're right. Homesteading. We don't serve homesteading. Homesteading serves us. And you could say this about permaculture, survivalism, whatever. It needs to be for our benefit. Diets, if you go on the Whole30, and for you to sustain on that, if you need to cheat a little, then cheat. If you're on the carnivore diet, we've talked about that, then cheat a little bit, because it should serve you. You shouldn't serve it. And so same thing with your relationship. Just do what you can on your own within the perimeters. Share the food, encourage them to come, maybe bribe them, cook them amazing things. Do what you can within the perimeters of that relationship. And there's no harm in trying to share your joy with them and saying, hey, you want to come see the garden? But to expect this overall change, you might look and say, well, maybe how can I change? We can't change other people. We can only look at ourselves and say, how can I change?
Well, and you mentioned hobbies. So I would also kind of look at it like when you get started, you're not going to go do a 100-acre cattle ranch, right? You're going to start small, a garden, a couple chickens, whatever. All you need from them is their blessing to let you do it. Yeah. You don't need to drag them into it. And if you decided you were going to get into RC cars, you wouldn't try to drag your wife into that. Or if you're the female in a relationship, I'm trying to be gender stereotypes, but let's say you're going to get into knitting. Yeah. Right? You might want your husband to wear the shawl or the, what do you call it? The scarf you made or something, but you're not going to try to make him knit. That's your thing you're going to do. And then they may or may not be attracted to certain parts of it with you. Yeah. My wife is not into this like me. But she likes pieces of it, and the parts she chooses to be involved with, she likes to. She takes care of the eggs. Yeah. We have some small egg customers and stuff like that. Now that we have a smaller flock, she involves the grandkids. If I'm out there really working, she'll bring me a beer. Yeah. What more can you? I was out there on Monday shoveling 4 yards of deep litter out of that thing, and she came out with my granddaughter and brought me an ice cold beer. I don't need any more than that, and I think being at peace with a blessing versus involvement is fine.
That's support, if you ever ask me. And they might need to see the support, and maybe she's not bringing you a beer. Maybe she's giving you her knitted scarf. You need to see that's her actually supporting you and what you're doing. You just may not be recognizing that.
This one, what birds can help with tick control? Only thing I've ever heard is guineas, but I've never raised them. The way turkeys are, I can't believe that anything survives their eyesight. We have these things. They're not a bug, but it's a seed. I don't know what they really are. They call them beggar's lice. They're horrible. They get in your socks, and you can't wash them out. You pull them out. Strings come with them. And when I had I had a flock of broad-breasted bronze for meat a few years, and I would get those on my socks, and they would come over when they were like half-grown poults, and I'd pull my pant leg up, and they would just pick every single seed off the sock. And I'm thinking if they could pick that little seed off that sock without pulling string, I can't see a tick doing very well. But I've never had a tick problem.
Yeah.
You? Any idea on that?
I've got Lyme disease, so I have a big tick problem. But we have ticks everywhere. I just pulled a tick off of me in February. I felt sorry for the tick because now it definitely has Lyme disease. So we concern, and so we try guineas. I mean, I will speak to guineas. People want to say guineas will go eat ticks. Actually, guineas are very hard to train to come back to one spot. Okay. And actually, once they do, they don't end up roaming. They end up wanting to get back with the chickens. Yeah. And then they get with the chickens, they just chase the chickens all day. I end up calling these things guinea clowns. I mean, they're very hard and difficult. There's no utopia. But now that I am running cows, sheep, and then chickens on my entire farm, even yards, we graze through our yards. Yeah. I think that's going to help. I mean, it's more like, really, I mean, just check yourself every night. I mean, I understand you got to have that tick on you for 24 hours before you're getting Lyme disease. So sometimes we want to do this permaculture thing and have the plants and animals do the work, but sometimes it's just easier to look over your body every night. Get you a tick key and pull that tick off.
Yeah, we don't really have a ton of problem here. And when I lived in Arkansas, we did. We had a lot more of them. Like, you'd literally take the dog for a walk and feel them drop on you out of the trees and shit. Like,
yeah.
Here, we just don't really have much problem. So I don't have a lot of experience with it. Anarchy says, what about fish farming? Could that compete with animals for protein production and profit? I don't think you've really delved into that much. I have like small garden ponds here. Like, my biggest pond is like 4,500 gallons. For a family, you can raise catfish, you can raise native catfish, you can raise panfish, and you can easily feed. I can say from experience, you can easily feed yourself a meal a week once you get established, but you're not going to be real profitable at that scale. The easiest thing you can do for meat production, if you have the space and the land, is put in ponds that are big enough to be self-supporting, that don't need a lot of pump action or something like that. Throw a freaking deer feeder with a deflector on it full of freaking catfish feed, and you literally don't have to do anything. Like, you don't have to do nothing, and your ducks can use that water and all, and it's the easiest meat production I think you can get. And if you can build a full ecosystem where they're getting, eating minnows and stuff like that. But I think fish farming for profit is a very specialized business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that one?
Fish. One of my early permaculture teachers taught me fish don't have to deal with gravity. So they don't have to calories standing up. So they can be efficient. I know nothing about trying to turn them into a profit.
I'll actually announce today, I am right now building the syllabus for a backyard aquaculture course that I'm going to be putting out. And it's good, but it's going to be geared toward producing for you and selling just enough to pay for feed and things like that. Things like selling, goldfish to yuppies, and selling aquatic plants, because they sell for a lot of money. Aquatic plants sell for a ton of money. There's so many garden pond like enthusiasts out there and stuff like that. KJ4, not really a question, just made a statement. I guess it's when we're talking about meat and the cows. Food independence is freedom, therefore a threat. I agree. I think that is why we are not just villainized, but also kind of made to be crazies. Like, he's the Justin Rhodes. He's a hermit. He lives with his chickens in the middle of the woods, and like he's crazy or something. Like, because it goes back to the relationship that I've talked about with the Native Americans and the buffalo. Some of the comments that came from military officers that were charged with eradicating them from the land were, things, I think Custer said something, that never have a people lived that were this free. And it's because they didn't, we couldn't offer them anything. What can you offer a person that knows my son will do as well as me or better, and my children will never be hungry? And I love my life as it is. What can you offer that person to pull them out of that life? Nothing. But as soon as their food security goes away, now you have control. And if you look at the history of colonialism and ongoing government control, like in places like Africa and all, food security is the number one leverage point that they use.
Yeah. You nailed it.
Any recommendation for books for the history of homesteading? I would recommend The Rooted Life by Justin Rhodes. What say you, Justin?
History of homesteading. Yeah, I don't know. Homesteading, that term was from when, wasn't it from when the government was giving land if you just went and claimed it? I mean, it's no longer that. So you could study that, I imagine. Now it's turned into, if you're reading my book, homesteading can be a basil plant in your windowsill.
I don't remember if I'm giving the right name of the series. Is the Firefly series, or there's a whole series of books? Foxfire. That series would be great to build a library on. I couldn't remember it. I have the whole series upstairs in my library. That's really very eye-opening, because it goes through so many of the skills. And there's like 22 books in it. I think it was published in the 70s.
Maybe it is Foxfire. It's just not coming up on the Google.
Yeah, I think it is. We'll worry about it later. Someone will tell us if we're wrong. Someone will tell us.
If you're getting the same book, they teach these old time survival skills, but not necessarily in like a step 1, step 2. It's more of a like if you sit down with an old timer and he's telling you how to make soap from lard.
Yeah. I think like listening to like
Yes.
little bit of archiving that's been, it's Foxfire. It's 12 book series.
Wigginton.
Like the interviews, like there's some interviews out there still where people, when YouTube started, because there's not very many people left like this, but that lived through the Depression and interviewing them about how they lived and how they cooked and how they survived. I think that's really interesting too. Derek says the Yellowstone quote about killing everything was originally from Ted Nugent. I can neither confirm nor deny that. Sounds probable. NN Averts says cattle need a lot of water. He didn't mean it environmentally because I challenged him on that. He just meant that if you do not have water set up for your cattle at certain seasons, it's a pain in the ass. But I think there's real easy ways to handle that. I mean, how do you handle water needs?
Well, it depends on where you're from. I think cattle need very little water because they only need 15 gallons a day. But that's because I'm east of the Mississippi and rain magically falls from the sky. I mean, that's something I came to appreciate traveling America.
Yeah.
Is rain. I mean, when I went out west, way out of my norm, I mean, my family has been in North Carolina 9 generations, so I'm deeply rooted here. It feels not right to me. I mean, there's plenty of people making a go there and making it happen. But I was so happy when we got to Hawaii, because we flew to Hawaii to document that, and I had that humidity back. I felt like I could breathe. You know, people out west come here and they feel like they're suffocating in the humidity. But I appreciate that moisture and being back here. You know, we're dealing with too much water. We're talking about how to not necessarily swells, but maybe swells on 1% contour to actually
move the water
out of here slowly.
Yeah.
Maybe not as fast as it's going away now, but move it out of here instead of capturing every last drop. So think about it, 15 gallons a day. I walked up the hill and found a spring that gives you, it's a quarter of a gallon a minute. So I forget the math on that, but it's 500 something gallons a day. Well, at 15 gallons a day for a cow, you could do a lot of that's more cows than I have pasture.
Yeah.
So I think relatively speaking, 15 cows isn't that crazy if you have rain. So
yeah, I would agree. And you know, we do hear a lot is almost everybody here that's in this game has a well, and they plumb water to stock tanks of flow.
Yes, I'm in a well right now. I'm just looking at redundancy and trying to find springs and maybe think about putting in ponds and have some redundancy. I'm an electric powered well right now.
Awesome.
It's no big deal to get 15 gallons of cow out of that for that. I think it's
K-Bonk
like 80.
asking me, I want to keep rolling for you because I've got you almost 2 hours. K-Bonk said, what would be the first 3 things you would try? I would say some sort of small livestock, birds, ducks or chickens, a garden, and then pick a skill set that goes with gardening, composting or plant starting. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I would start gardens, meat chickens, and egg laying chickens.
Okay. This one is really maybe not meant for us the way that it's coming across, because how do you advertise? You know, I am a small scale homesteader and a podcaster. You're a content creator. Most of what you do is for yourself. So we don't really advertise to sell product. I've done really well selling duck eggs by advertising on Craigslist, which is free, and through basic search engine optimization. Do you do anything to sell product?
I look at, I started this is a business. This has been a business for me all along. I would encourage somebody like him, no matter what you're doing, start creating content around what you're doing. Do you like videos? Do you like to speak and interview, podcast? Do you like to take pictures and write beautiful things? Instagram, start creating content, and you build these followings, and then you see a need there, and you can work to meet that need and sell that need. Like you just spoke about a course you're coming up where you've seen this need. You probably have some sort of passion into this aquaponics thing, but you also are seeing a need in your audience, and eventually you're teasing this, and eventually it will be available.
Yeah.
And this isn't like advertise, like pay for an ad in a magazine, but this is building up an audience, finding a need, and then serving that. Yeah. And trade money for knowledge, know-how.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you said. Like, it's one, I see that there's not enough information on this. There's tons of aquaponics, but true aquaculture at a backyard scale, there's really nothing. I've given away almost everything I know for free, but it's all disjointed. And then you explain something, and then somebody has 5 questions that you just answered. And there needs to be kind of an academic path through it so that I can have it all in one place. And if I have to charge a couple $300 for it, if you don't want it, I mean, you can go piece it together, or you can get it in the consolidated package. And having an audience in a podcast of my size, I can sell that product. I don't even have to worry about advertising. The content creation is the advertising. The last one here, somebody mentioned turkeys. There was a lot of people mentioned turkeys when we were talking about meat. We didn't really go into it. I love turkeys. I've done the broad-breasted bronze. The one year I did them, I kept 3, and I put 85 pounds of meat, boned meat, in the freezer from 3 turkeys. And then plus the cores for stock and all. But I sold the most of them. And what I did with those is I said, on there, I didn't put it out on Craigslist. I didn't put it out on Nextdoor. I just said on air. I get some local people. I know there's plenty of y'all around here. I'm doing turkeys. They'll be ready a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. They're going to average dressed weight between 30 and 50 pounds. You come here, you take it, you either process it or take it to a processor. Then on your honor, pay me on the meat weight. And I came up with a price per pound. Sold every one of them. I had them gone in 2 weeks after I put that out. And so content creation to me is the most powerful form of marketing. And video and audio, I think, are your real wins. Because even though we're doing this video, there's people right now, they'll check in at the video. There's a lot of them just listening. Right? Not just the podcast audience, but even the video, they're just listening. And because audio is the one you can really multitask with. I guess you can read in the bathroom in the morning, right? But if you're actually out jogging or you're doing work and your work is kind of mindless or something, you can listen. And to me, as long as you've got if it's audio alone or audio video, you have that ability for a person to consume your content and then form a relationship with you. And then you don't really have to advertise at that point.
I used to run a punch press, and I was listening to you all the time. I was consuming particularly the business podcasts. I was back in the day with Permaculture Voices. Remember that? I heard Greg Judy on that for the first time. And speaking of turkeys, we'll grow 20 a year so that we can have 1 a month. Like, why you got to eat turkey 1 time a year? I mean, as people eat a lot of meat, let's mix it up. Let's eat turkey once a month, and we have some to give away, trade or sell. Love it. It's
and the broad-breasted, if you've ever done them, we did 1 year. We did a breast and a thigh for the family Thanksgiving. That was it. A half a breast. It was the breast cutlet was 9.5 pounds. Just 1/2 of a breast boneless is 9.5 pounds. It's like a brisket, right? So then, you're not eating that. Like people, when I was doing those, like I said, if you think you're going to put a whole bird on the table, like the Griswold family Christmas or whatever, don't, because you're not going to fit the bird in the oven. The amount of meat yield is insane.
We had to cut one in half once just to get them in the bag, get them in the turkey bag.
Yeah, I have a 22-inch commercial vac sealer, and I'm like, this isn't going to work. Like, I can't fit the bird in there. Dude, again, let people know how they can find you, and I'll pitch your book for you again. It's The Rooted Life by Justin Rhodes. Where's the best place for them to get this to support you? Is it Amazon, or should they buy it direct? Or
they're here live. The people here live. I don't know when your audio version comes out, but if you go in by March 7th, you can get all kinds of bonuses. If you go to therootedlife.com, we got all kinds of bonus: science edition, seeds, video content, and then of course you can find me on YouTube at Justin Rhodes and my streaming platform Abundance Plus.
And we'll make sure that those are available in the show notes. And as far as when this is going to go out, about an hour from right now. So I'm going to eat lunch, edit it in, and the audio version. Yeah, every day, Justin, we do a show, and it goes out the same day. So.
Hey, you're going long here. This is long for you, isn't it? 2 hours.
This is long, but it's you, so it's okay. We're usually at 1:15 with an interview at the most. Adam, we did Adam Curry recently. We went like 2 hours and 20 minutes with Adam, 2 hours with you. It's usually not this long, though. But this was there's constant interaction with the audience. For those listening to this, if you've never made it into a live stream, remember, getbythesurvivalpodcast.com. Click on the Get Social tab. The best way, get on the Telegram announcement channel, because you'll get a direct text about an hour and a half to 2 hours before every day, and that way you won't forget. And you can always find out the next coming live stream at tspclive.com. Justin, thank you for being with us today. I had a great time with you.
Yes, you too. We'll have to do this more often. But let's not wait.
Absolutely. Anytime you want, bro.